Hello world, and we are back. My name is Kyle Fischel. This is going to be episode 146 of my poker vlog. For this one, we're going to move right into the hands because I have a ton of them to go over, so let's roll the tape. We arrive at the One Eye Jacks poker room in Sarasota, Florida, go straight to the 2-5 game where we buy in for $1,000 before we get met with a first hand of note. Under the gun raises to $20. I'm on the button with ace-5 of clubs. You can go either way with this. You can 3-bet, you can call. Table is short-handed. This is literally the first hand of the table, so we're going to just call, not get too out of line just yet, and the blind side to fold. So we're heads up to a flop of 10-9-5 rainbow. Flopping third pair, not my favorite. When my opponent checks to me, I don't really have a hand that I think is strong enough to bet myself. I think my opponent would call with even like queen jack, king queen, overs and gut shots. So those hands have a ton of equity against me. Single pairs of 10s and 9s are beating me, so I think I should pot control this one and check it back. Turn is the 4 of diamonds. Brings backdoor diamonds, and when my opponent checks to me a second time, now I think I can go for some value. He's really not shown any interest in this hand. I should have the best hand here most of the time when he checks to me twice. So I'm going to go for some protection, plenty of straight draws and overcards, and now flush draws that could pay me off. So I go for a $30 wager. My opponent calls very quickly, and the river is the 10 of clubs. A card I'm very happy to see. Very unlikely my opponent has a 10 now. Also, a 9's probably not folding to a bet. So when he checks to me, I think that all the missed straight draws are just going to fold to any bet anyway. I have some showdown value, so I'm just going to check this one back. Somewhat disappointed as my opponent shows ace-4 of spades. So he had one of the only hands I think I could have squeaked out a little bit of value from. But either way, we take down the first hand of the day. Following that, with one limp, I raise to $20 with 8-9 of diamonds. The big blind min raises to 40. The limper decides to call. I'm not going anywhere for a min raise, and a 4-bet seems somewhat ridiculous as my hand plays plenty fine multi-way. So I make the call, and we are 3 ways to a flop of king of hearts, 3 of spades, deuce of clubs. So we whiff almost as much as you can. Not even backdoor diamonds, not even backdoor straight draw. The big blind continues for $55, and missing the board this substantially is just going to be a fold for me. Include this because this is how a lot of poker hands are going to go sometimes. You're just going to completely whiff and give up on it. A little different than how vlogs, including myself, normally go of just always flopping sets or straight draws or flush draws. This is how it goes sometimes.
Welcome to the real world. It sucks. You're gonna love it.
Following that, I'd been at the table for probably 2 to 3 hours at this point, and the 2 hands you've seen are the only hands I've actually played because I'm that card dead. Which brings me to 6-4 of hearts. The best premium I've seen in hours. I limp it because I just want to play a hand, even though this one should probably just be a fold all the time. But when I limp, a later position player limps, and the cutoff raises to $25. Folds to the small blind, he calls, I'm in there as well, and the later position limper folds. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of 10-5-5 2 hearts. About as good as you could hope for flopping a flush draw. When it checks to me, I check to the pre-flop aggressor, who continues for $25. Then the small blind calls. As mentioned, I haven't played a hand in hours, and I think it's a great spot for a bluff raise. As a limp caller, I have every 5 in range. The pre-flop aggressor really shouldn't have it too often. And the small blind, I expect him to raise at least at some frequency if he had a 5 for fear of the obvious flush draw out there. So with a flush draw myself as well as backdoor straight draws, I'm going to bump up the action here. Hoping to get all my opponent's random overcards as well as maybe some weaker 10x's to fold. I make it $85. And after a bit of thinking, the initial aggressor folds, and then the small blind thinks a little bit, and he folds as well. So we get one through, feeling good. We are picking our spots well so far. Following that, with one limp, I raise pocket 10s of the red variety to $25, which gets action from the button and the limper. So we're going 3 ways to a flop a second time. This flop comes 6-5-3 2 hearts. When it checks to me, hoping that I narrowed my opponent's range to cards higher than a 6 a lot of the time with my $25 pre. I think it's pretty safe to go for some value here. I have the 10 of hearts to block some of the flush draws my opponent could be drawing to. My opponent had like 8-9, maybe 6-7, ace-6, 8s-9s, things like that. They'll pay off some bets, so I start out sizing up a little bit, $45, a little over half pot. Button folds very quickly, and the middle position limper decides to put in a call. When the turn is the king of diamonds, this is a card I'm pretty happy to continue betting on. If I had just ace-king offsuit, ace-king hearts, king-queen of hearts, I would play my hand the exact same way, and making top pair would make me feel a lot better about my hand. thinking that my opponent can never really connect with this king unless he had exactly king X of hearts. I think this is a good spot to go for the continuation. I bet $95. Still get value from flush draws, maybe a sticky 6. His opponent didn't really like to fold all too often, but in this hand, he does eventually let it go. Still picking spots relatively well until the next hand of note. Folds all the way to a middle position player who raised it to $25. I look down at ace 9 of spades. Again, it's been like 4 hours now, and I've only played 4 or 5 hands, so this one's definitely going to be a defend. Could be a 3-bet, but my opponent has a tower over there. Not really trying to get full stacks in against him specifically. Well, your heads up to a flop of queen 5-4, rainbow 1 spade. I do have backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, so probably going to have to call 1 c-bet at least because I have all the sets of 4s and 5s in range, as well as 6, 7, 2, 3. So I think this board's a little bit better for me in the big blind, but when I check, my opponent checks it back. Turn king of spades. Well, I guess this one's kind of neutral. My opponent can have all the king X and queen X for 1 straight of pot control, but I turn the nut flush draw, and I haven't played very many hands at all today. Very card dead. So I'm going to go for a closer to pot size bet, as I don't have a whole lot of showdown value. And if my opponent calls, I just build the size of the pot for the times my draw does hit. So I bet $40. My opponent folds very quickly, and we take one down, keeping our stack pretty much even for the day so far. Find that it folds all the way to me on the button. I raised to $15 with ace 8 of clubs. Think it's a fine open, especially how tight I've been. Think that this hand should definitely be strong enough to open, and my opponent should give me some credit based on how few hands I've been playing. However, this opponent is pretty much brand new to the table. He's switched out from a previous player in that seat, and he doesn't know that I haven't played any hands because he raises to $50. Well, I get to play the rest of the hand in position. I have a suited ace. Feels decent. Think it's fine to defend my button open. So I call for $50, and we're going heads up to a flop of queen 10-7 rainbow with 1 club. When my opponent checks to me, I think this is a good spot to bet and bluff. There are plenty of cards I can continue barreling on. Any club, any 9, ace, even a 6 or a jack might be cards I continue to bet on, but I think I get my opponent's auto folds, like his 3-bet bluffs, like ace 4, ace 5, 6s, 8s, 9s to just give up with a c-bet. So I'm going to bet this one. I bet $55. My opponent doesn't take too long before calling, and we are still heads up to a turn card, which is the king of hearts. Pretty horrendous card. Like, my opponent could have a lot of king jack, ace jack, as well as ace king that play this exact same way. So not picking up any draw, any equity of any time. I think I just have to give up now. When he checks it to me, I check it back. And the river is the 5 of diamonds. So we have nothing, and my opponent bets $120 on this one. This is just going to be a fold for me. I bet hoping to pick up equity. It did not happen. Board is much better for my opponent than me. So we torch about $100 on this hand. Playing it pretty bad, pretty unnecessary, but it is what it is. Following that, when an early position player raises to $20, I'm on the button with ace jack offsuit. If it was suited, I would definitely 3-bet it. Offsuit, I think it's fine to call or 3-bet some of the time, depending on your opponent. This time, I choose to just call, and the big blind calls as well. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of 8-4-4 rainbow. When both opponents check to me, I think me on the button has pretty much all the 4s in range. I'd play with 4-5, ace-4, pocket 8s, 9s, 10s. So I'm going to bet here with my bluff of ace high as well. Thinking that it's likely my opponents miss this board completely a lot of the time. So I throw a bet of $40, 2/3 pot. The big blind, who was my nemesis from the last hand, decides to call, and the other player decides to fold. So we're going heads up to a turn card, which is the 3 of hearts. Thinking this board didn't change a whole lot, and a second barrel get my opponent's 8x to fold, as I'd usually just play like 9s, 10s, ace 4, 4, 5 the way I'm playing this hand. I'm going to put in the second barrel, put a lot of pressure on him, and get his hands like 6-7, 5-6, ace-5, ace-3, things like that to fold. So I put in the second barrel of $110. And to this bet, it doesn't take too long for my opponent to decide to raise it to $320.
It wasn't brains that got me here, I can assure you of that.
Maybe he's had a hand both these times, or maybe he just knows that I'm full of shit. Either way, this is the opponent who is going to be punishing my missteps on the day. So again, with air, we're just going to let this one go and hopefully punt a little less in the future. But the next hand of note, I'm in early position. I raised to $20 with queen jack offsuit. The cutoff button and big blind decide to call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop of 10-8 deuce rainbow. Seems pretty good for my hand, but the big blind decides to lead out for $40. I play with this player a bit. I think this lead is often just a top pair type holding. And against that, any 9, queen, jack, even a king I could potentially raise and get him to fold a 10. So we're definitely not going to fold this exact hand on this exact board with this exact opponent. So I make the call. Unfortunately for me, this brings along the button. He has pretty much an uncapped range, so we're going to have to proceed this a little bit more cautiously than I would have. But all of that goes out the window when the turn is the 9 of hearts. We bink the nuts, and the big blind doesn't even care. He throws out a bet of $80. Sizing up here. Not sure if I want to just call here and keep the button in there with all of his hands, or raise now to deny equity from flush draws. I choose a somewhat middle route where I raise very small, 175. Want to get as much money in here now as possible when I have the actual nuts. Do have a heart blocker as well. 175, close to a min raise. Too much for the button. He folds his hand, and the big blind who bet 2 streets, don't really see him folding, especially if he has a 10, maybe a 10 jack, 10 queen. He's never getting out of this one, and it's proven correctly when he eventually throws in the call. Feeling good about this. Can I see a brick river one-time dealer? Nope. King of hearts. Flush draw completes, but we do have the queen of hearts. More disappointing because it's an overcard. I think if my opponent had like ace 10, he's never really going to put any more money in on this hand. But to my surprise, my opponent jams for $300. Well, with a queen of hearts blocker, I guess if you somehow backed into a flush, good for you. But all the sets might play this way. Maybe 10-9, some 2 pairs, so we're never folding this one. I make the call. My opponent flips over 110, and that is it. Queen Jack is going to take down a pretty decent sized pot to get us all the way out of the hole, maybe plus about $50 to $60. Feels good. Please take a moment and subscribe. Before we arrive at the next hand of note. Under the gun raised to $30. I look down at red pocket jacks. Because it's under the gun and he 6x'd it, not even his normal 4 or 5x, I'm going to give him credit for a stronger hand this time. I'm just going to call. Honestly, you should 3-bet this a lot of the time, but against under the gun, I think it's fine to just call and play in position. Flop is ace 10-4 all hearts. Do have the jack of hearts, so when my opponent down bets to $20, I think it's fine. Just call this, hopefully peel a heart, peel a jack, maybe a straightening card, but when the turn is the 6 of spades, my opponent sizes up to 80, and because of his narrow under the gun, bigger than normal opening, he could have ace king, ace queen with a heart. He could have pocket aces. He could have ace 10. Gonna discount a lot of the ace jack because I would double block it. But against all these hands, even pocket kings, pocket queens with a single heart, like my hand's doing pretty bad. So guess we're just going to give him credit for having a hand and let this one go. I don't know about this one. Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. We win a small one before we arrive at a final hand of note. With a button straddle, there's 2 limps. I look down at 8-9 of clubs. I raise to $50. I think GTO would say go closer to 60 or 65, but 50 was the number that I used in the moment. And this seems to be a good enough number because all 3 opponents fold and we take down about $30-some pre, so seems like a decent way to end the day. So we're into the game for $1,200, out of the game for $1,115, which is a loss of $85 across 6 hours, equates to $14 an hour or 3 big blinds an hour going in the other direction. Yeah, if you want to be successful at poker, game selection is one of the biggest topics you'll hear people talk about. If you want to maximize your win rate, you got to maximize the time you spend in the best games. And are the best games Wednesdays at 10 a.m.? Probably not, but if you're also trying to make poker a thing, you got to make choices about the hours you're going to work. Playing in the early games gives me more time to spend with my family, gives more time to go home and then edit the videos to make the vlog for the world. So that's just a quick side note to add. You know, the opponents in some of these daytime games are a lot more competent than others you may run into later in the day. Specifically, Saturday nights are very, very good. And when you play better players, they're going to have some moves. They're going to have some bluff attempts. They're going to have some 3-bets. Some people might even 4-bet bluff. Just understand the table you're sitting at when you're playing. And without any more rambling, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. There will be more to come next week. Thank you.